They will never admit, but they'll be told, if you want money in agriculture, behave this way. If you want money in this area, behave this way. They will never tell that to the Chinese. They will never tell that to the Indians. They will never tell that to the Vietnamese. They will never tell that to the Koreans. But in Africa, they tell us. That is why, as I speak to you now, under this new scramble, the IMF and the World Bank are back, telling you who to hire in your universities, what to sell and what not to sell. It is a sad situation. So today, as I look at Africa in that new scramble, the Chinese are here. I hope that this institution was not built by the Chinese.
Professor PLO Lumumba calls out a harsh reality. Elections may bring African leaders to power, but foreign interests often set the agenda. Western envoys arrive after the ballots are cast, not to support democracy, but to shape it. Gates, Blair, Macron, figures symbolizing a broader system where aid is conditional and influence is quietly enforced. Unlike China or India, African nations are told how to behave if they want agriculture, education, or trade support. Lumumba's message cuts through diplomatic niceties, pointing to a new form of control masked as a partnership. It's a direct challenge to the status quo, and a signal to leaders like Ibrahim Traoré, who are pushing back against this dependency model.
The Turks are here. The British are here. The French are here. The Qataris are here. The Americans are here. This time round, they are so subtle that we don't even recognize them, but they control us. What are we going to do about it in order to develop? We must do something. And if we don't do that thing else, you who have been trained in this institution, you have traveled the world. You have traveled Nigeria. There are two things that you can do with your traveling. You can marvel. Says it is great in China. You can marvel. You can wonder or feel pain. I'm urging you to feel pain. To feel pain for the continent of Africa, and in your own way, when you go out there, go and do something about it, because it has also been demonstrated that it can be done. I've traveled across this continent and I've seen that development is possible. I was in Rwanda before 1994. I was in Rwanda in 1996. Genocide. 1 million dead. Its obituary written will never rise, they said. You go to Rwanda now. They are demonstrating that it can be done. Go to Kigali now. See what they are doing in the health sector in their own small way. See how they are collaborating in the area of mobile telephony in their own small way. It can be done. I've been to Botswana and I've seen what they are doing in their own small way. I've been to Mauritius, see what they are doing in their own small way. And they do not have the resources that other countries have. They do not have the resources that the Democratic Republic of Congo has. And I'm giving these examples to say that indeed it can be done, and it can be done within the continent of Africa. So what we must do is to begin to pull together, As I've been sitting and listening, I was also struggling to have internet in this room. And every effort was being made to connect me to internet. And all those efforts failed. Why? Because we are in an era of the Internet of Things. We are in an era of nanotechnology. It cannot be right that in the Africa's largest economy, in Nigeria, I do not have internet at an institution that deals with security. You get the point that I'm trying to make? It cannot be right. And I know why we don't have internet connectivity. It is because we are divided. We have 55 telephone access codes. Nigeria 234, Ghana 233, Kenya 254, Tanzania 255, Uganda 256, Zambia 260, Zimbabwe 263. How can we, in this day and age, you cross into Benin, you cross into Togo, you cross into Guinea-Bissau, you have a different internet connectivity. Why can't Africa have a single satellite and a single telephone code so that when I travel from Mogadishu in Somalia to Dhaka in Senegal, like the Chinese do, like the Americans do, like the Indians do, we can have the same, because communication is critical to development. And I'm saying this, part of my agenda is to prick your conscience with live examples, that you may go out there irritated, but irritated to do the right thing. And I'm suggesting that indeed, when we talk about development, this is what we must do. But is Africa conscious of her state? Yes, Africa is conscious. This is what makes me happy. That after all these analysis, it appears to me that Africans have now recognized that going forward, we can only defeat the conspiracies, we can only have development as we are talking about it by working as a team.
Lumumba does not mince words when addressing Africa's quiet but persistent foreign presence. The Americans, the French, the British, the Chinese, the Qataris, they are all here. But unlike the overt colonial powers of the past, today's influence is more subtle, entrenched, and, in many ways, more difficult to confront. He warns that while their presence may not always be visible, their control is deeply felt, shaping decisions, policies, and priorities under the guise of development partnerships or strategic investment. But rather than simply pointing fingers outward, Lumumba turns the spotlight inward. He urges Africa's educated class, those who have traveled, studied, and seen the world, to channel their awareness into action. It is not enough to admire what others have achieved in places like China. He challenges them to feel discomfort, even pain, for what Africa has not yet become. This emotional shift from passive observation to active responsibility is at the core of his appeal. He uses examples from Rwanda, Botswana, Mauritius, and others not to romanticize them, but to show that progress is possible, even without vast resources. These success stories reveal that development is not a foreign concept reserved for the global north. It is already happening, in African terms, by Africans. What's lacking is not potential, but coordination and unity. And this lack of unity, as Lumumba explains, is visible even in the continent's digital infrastructure. The fact that each African country maintains its telephone code, separate internet systems, and disconnected networks reflects the broader disconnection among nations. It's not just an inconvenience, it's symbolic of how fragmentation undermines progress. His frustration is made tangible when he recounts the irony of struggling to access the internet in Nigeria's top security institution, Africa's largest economy, during an era dominated by digital communication.
Africa must be very careful. We must be very careful because of lack of resources in Africa. I'm beginning to hear things that worry me. And because I'm a keen student of what is happening in Africa, I'm getting worried on a daily basis. the forces that divide us, the belief by many people in Africa that if we separated from our current countries, we would be better. It is beginning to happen. It is happening here in Nigeria. It is happening. I saw a letter last week addressed to the president of Zambia by a people in Zambia called Baroseland. And they are telling President Hakainde Hichilema that you remember in 1964 we had an agreement with the Lusaka government that the time has now come for Baroseland to become an independent country. Can you believe it? I hear people in Namibia saying, do you remember that there was a strip called the Caprivi Strip? I hear people in Ghana saying that you remember that in the Volta region we had a different country. I hear people in Zimbabwe saying that there should be a country called Mtuakazi. I hear people in South Africa, the South Africans, saying that we should have a separate country in the Western Cape. I hear people in Ethiopia saying we should have Tigray and Oromo. The centrifugal forces are there. And the only way to bring them in is to create a sense of belongingness. The people must feel that they are part of it. I remember the words of John Garang of South Sudan when he spoke in Khartoum. He told the Numeri government, we do not want to create a separate state, but make unity attractive. Make unity attractive, make Sudan attractive, make Khartoum attractive, because if you don't make it attractive, we will separate, and that will make us weaker. And I'm saying this because of this thing we call democracy. Democracy demands that people have a sense of belonging and that they believe that the country in which they live represents their interests and that deliberate efforts are being made in that regard. So, fellow Africans, I'm one who believes that this continent has a contribution to make. There is not a continent today that has the natural resources that this continent has. Not one. There is not a continent today that has a population as young as ours, which could be a resource. There is not a continent. There is not a continent today that has the resources in different diverse ways which can be harnessed. With a population of 1.4 billion, we are a potential market. But we must also warn ourselves. I am aware that you are talking about climate change. It is only through unity, therefore, that we can fight all these. Our rivers are drying. Lake Chad has shrunk by nearly 1/3. The rivers are drying. The climate is changing. The Sahara is coming down south. The rivers down are drying or getting polluted. Our farms are not yielding the way they were yielding before. Our seeds are being destroyed. Our young men and women are running away. And remember, the Germans are now saying, we want young people. The Canadians are saying, we want young people. We are in danger. You who have been trained in this institution, now go back to your countries and tell your countries that yes, there is a conspiracy against the continent of Africa, but the human relationship, is it not about conspiracy? Even in families, are there not conspiracies? Is it not our duty to fight and defeat those conspiracies so that that is no longer an excuse? Go out there and say that we have the possibilities and that these possibilities require and demand that we look at Africa as a total whole. Go out there in your little ways and make your contribution. The 78 of you who are graduating here today, I'm suggesting to you that development must start with you. Go back and let in every institution where you are, let it be said that since he came back from NISS, he or she is different. He is different in a positive way. And all of us who are here, whether we are politicians or academics and in different sectors, let us go out there having made a solemn vow that Africa must do it. If you can't do it for yourself, ask yourself which Nigeria you want to bequeath to your children and your children's children. You are here, maximum 40 years, you will have gone upstairs. But after 40 years, in which kind of country will you want your children to be? This is the question. It is not about you and me. It is about them. This is intergenerational. Africa must change. Africa can change. And it can only change if we change our minds. And our minds we must change.
In the final stretch of his address, Professor PLO Lumumba issues a deeply personal and regionally prophetic warning. Africa must be careful. His tone shifts from critique to concern as he raises the issue of internal fragmentation, a force potentially as dangerous as external interference. The growing sentiment across parts of the continent that secession might lead to progress is not just troubling, it's destabilizing. Lumumba points to concrete, unfolding examples, from Barotseland in Zambia to the Caprivi Strip in Namibia and the Western Cape in South Africa, where people revisit historical boundaries and question the legitimacy of national unity. But this is not a call to suppress dissent. Instead, Lumumba argues that the only way to hold the continent together is by giving people a real sense of belonging. Citing South Sudanese leader John Garang's words, "Make unity attractive," he emphasizes that unity cannot be demanded. It must be earned through fairness, inclusion, and visionary leadership. For democracy to be meaningful, citizens must feel that their interests are reflected in governance. Without that, divisions will continue to grow. And then, perhaps his most important reminder, Africa's transformation is not about us. It is about the generations that follow. The question he leaves hanging is powerful. In which kind of country will you want your children to be? With that, he reframes the conversation as an intergenerational responsibility. Our choices today shape the future of a continent that, for all its challenges, still holds vast, untapped potential. In closing, Lumumba's message is this: Africa can change, but only if Africans change first. And that change must begin in the mind, through unity, vision, and a renewed sense of duty to the continent and its people. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments. What stood out most to you from Lumumba's speech? And more importantly, how do you think African nations can move from potential to power? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.